Hi, I'm David Tangredi, and it is Monday, May 2nd, 2016. Today's A Fool's Inclination podcast is called The Wheel. In the Tarot, there is a card called the Wheel of Fortune. And the idea behind the Wheel of Fortune is that luck changes over time, like a wheel. It rises and falls. In a textbook definition, when somebody does a reading, if the Wheel of Fortune shows upright in the reading, then your luck is improving. If it appears upside down in the reading, then your luck is turning for the worst. Now, when I do tarot, or over the years, my readings have evolved a little bit because I've always reached for a positive interpretation of every card, regardless whether the card has a negative slant or not. And the idea of luck turning for the worst didn't seem to have any positive ramification. It felt more like a warning. So back then, when I did readings, I would always have the cards upright. And then from context, I would tune in and see what the message was. So a second definition of the Wheel of Fortune is the idea that the wheel can't be turned off. So to become less affected by the movement of the wheel is to move to the center. And we know this from physics, because if you're on something that spins, like those kids' playground, I don't even know what they're called, but it's kind of like a merry-go-round. And if you're on the outside of it when it's spinning, you feel much more force. But if you're in the middle, you're basically just turning and not moving. So the idea when the Wheel of Fortune would come up in a reading is to remind us to move towards the center, to center ourselves, to ground ourselves, to slow ourselves down so that we're not as affected by change in fortune. So a third definition of the Wheel of Fortune, and I'm numbering these by vibration, let's say. So the third definition is the idea to move our perspective, to gain a higher perspective of whatever situation we're in. Because if we rise above the Wheel of Fortune, then we can gain more information about what's happening. And the idea is if you rise high enough, then you gain the perspective of the world. And in my second book, Scribe to the Pantheon of Rome, in that novel, towards the end, there's a discussion comparing these two cards. Because as you can see by looking at them, they both have symbols along the outside. They both resemble a wheel or a circle. They both have symbols along the outside, and they are in fact the same symbols. I won't get into all of that right now, but what I'm going to do on my written blog is I'll post a picture of the two cards side by side so you can kind of look at them and take a look at the symbols that are in the corners, etc. So when the Wheel of Fortune comes up, the goal is to keep moving to a higher and higher perspective until the idea of positive and negative sort of goes away. Because the meaning of the world, if you're out in space orbiting the planet, all you see is the beauty of it. You don't see bad weather or good weather, you don't see misfortune, you don't see any of the little things that are happening on the planet that are conflicts. All you see is this beautiful blue planet with clouds and green and all this stuff. So in the law of attraction, now I'm going to kind of switch a little bit and kind of come back around. So we know about the law of attraction from Abraham. And the basic idea, for those who are less familiar, the basic idea of the law of attraction is that we carry ourselves within a certain vibration. And the vibration that we live within, they refer to as our grid. And that vibration brings experiences to us. So your grid vibration is where you are right now. Of course, the grid is the way I see it is the grid is a range. Can think about it this way. So today is May 2nd. So think about the month of April. Now that April is gone, consider the good days that you've had and the bad days, your high points and your low points. You can probably, given a 15 minutes or so, you could probably figure out what your highest emotional points were and what your lowest emotional points were. For example, for me, I would say at the highest, I would reach excitement, and at the lowest, a mild anxiety or a mild feeling of depression or sadness. So that constitutes our recent, what I would call our recent range of vibration. And we all have a range. I mean, everybody has a range. Nobody is always the same every day. And some of us might have higher range, some a lower. Some might have a wider range, so they'll have higher highs and lower lows, and other people will be more even keel. For the sake of discussion, I want to now think about the Wheel of Fortune as a representation of our range of vibration. And I'm going to get into that more as we go on. So over the course of a month, we vacillate within our range. Unlike a wheel, it doesn't just roll up and down. It's not like we're rising and falling and rising and falling. We're probably jumping all over the place. We can be having a good day and something catches our attention and it triggers an emotional response. And so we have a moment where we sink really low. Maybe we get really angry or we get really frustrated. And sometimes we just go in the other direction. A song comes on and we forget everything that's going on that's bothering us. And for the duration of that song, we're just having a good time. Now, Abraham says that if we do nothing other than respond to what shows up in kind, then our range will stay pretty much the same. So what that means is if we're just observing what's happening around us or what's happening to us, and when it's something unpleasant, we respond, even if we don't respond in action, if we just have an emotional response that is in kind. So we're having an unpleasant emotion for an unpleasant experience, and then exhibiting joy towards a positive experience, then pretty much what we're going to do is we're going to remain stable from month to month, because what we're doing is we're exercising the full range of our vibration, of our grid. Now, what they also say is that if we soothe our lows and we milk our highs, that we will eventually shift our range upward. Because what we'll be doing is, by soothing our lows, what we'll do is we'll talk ourselves back from the ledge, so to speak. Instead of responding in kind, we might initially begin to respond in kind, but we can distract ourselves away from it. We can soothe ourselves away from it, so that we're constantly kind of I don't want to say resisting, and I don't want to say, we're moving away from the negative. And then when positive things come up, by milking it, what we're doing is we're focusing, we're trying to maintain our attention in the positive place to increase not only the duration and time, but the vibration. So by doing that, we'll shift it upward. Now, of course, whatever we can do to shift upward, we can also do to shift downward, meaning that if we rant and rave over our lows, if we have a negative experience and then tell person after person after person, so that we're essentially reliving it over and over and over again, then what we're doing is we're adding more vibration to the negative. And if we disregard our high moments, saying that they're chance or they're unusual or thinking of them as happenstance, then we're kind of discounting the positive vibration. Now, it may sound like it's no big deal, but given enough time, meaning month to month to month, if we're shifting our vibration in slight ways from one month to the next, then when from 1 year to the next, you're going to have a noticeable change. That's law of attraction basis. So now I want to talk a little bit about contrast, because Abraham always talks about contrast. And for the longest time, contrast felt to me like it was a separate thing. It didn't feel like an aspect of the law of attraction. It felt like it was almost a separate law or a separate phenomena that then plays into it. And so Abraham says the purpose of contrast is, well, Abraham says creativity is born from contrast. In other words, from contrast, you better know what your preferences are. And that makes sense, because one might say, I like it warm. Another person might say, I like it cool. But then because we have a whole range of weather, by experiencing that, we can be more and more specific. So some might like 72 degrees and other people might like 78 degrees and other people might prefer 82 degrees. So you can get as specific as you want given the contrast. However, there's this thing that occurs in life that we all know about. That's when bad things happen. And those feel like assertions. They feel like they're beyond contrast. It could be the difference between a storm and a tornado. When a tornado strikes, there's destruction. And if this destruction happens to us, it feels like assertion. It feels like some negative force applied itself, asserted itself into our experience and wreaked havoc. But Abraham tells us there is no assertion in the universe, which means that nothing ever happens to us which isn't already in our vibration. So in their words, we have to resonate with theft in order to be robbed, and we have to align with illness in order to contract cancer. These are just two examples of very unpleasant experiences that either we have had in the past or that we know somebody who have had them. They're common enough that we all know somebody who's experienced these. And if you don't think that our belief in assertion is huge, consider our society and how much money is spent toward our justice system, police force, and towards the military. The only reason we have laws against crime and police to enforce those laws is because we fear bad people doing bad things to us. And the only reason why we have a military is because we fear bad people doing bad things to us. And because of those fears, because of those beliefs, we accept or we believe in the idea of assertion. We believe that there is chance, that there is happenstance, that that bad things happen to good people rather than the way the law of attraction says. So it's interesting because the greatest aspects of the law of attraction are also the hardest to believe, in my opinion. And the two greatest aspects of the law of attraction are these. One, that all desires are possible. That if this realm could cause you to want something, it could give you that thing, whatever it is. The second is that there is no assertion in the universe, that nothing ever happens to you by chance. So I can understand contrast. It's easy to understand contrast. I mean, we don't ever think that we'd ever reach a place where every single day is going to be the same. Even if we improve the condition of our lives, we're going to still expect some days to be better than others. We just want our highs to be higher and our lows to be higher. But what about this assertion thing? I mean, it still feels like assertion exists. So how do we begin to think about negative experiences in a way that moves away from the idea of assertion? Well, let me tell you this one story, because I was thinking about this the other day, and it was helping me see assertion more as contrast. So when I was in my early 20s, I moved to San Francisco in September of 1989. And as you may recall, in October of 1989 was when the earthquake hit, the Loma Prieta earthquake. It was a 7.1 earthquake. It was the one that damaged the bridge and destroyed the freeway in Oakland and made the freeway in San Francisco unusable and stopped the World Series. So that event affected a large number of people. There are millions of people that live in the Bay Area, and anyone who was there during that time or who owned property in the Bay Area was potentially affected by that. So Abraham would say that it was a source of contrast because it was a very different day than your average day. And for me, when I look back on the event, it was an amazing thing to experience. I mean, I sat there and I was watching walls move and objects, very weighty objects, bounce around like they had no weight at all. And my first reaction was wonderment and amazement. I mean, I just couldn't believe what was happening. I didn't even react in fear. I was just reacting in awe. And then I was remembering, oh, I better put myself in a place where I'm safer. And so then, after a couple seconds of being dazed, I was like, okay, what do I need to do? And, the earthquake didn't last very long at all. Nothing around me brought any harm to me. After it was done, I walked home and power was out. And so there were days of the after effect. Everybody was in a different place after the earthquake than they were before. And yet, when I think back, there was nothing that happened that negatively impacted my life. My income was not affected at all. My property was not affected at all. My health was not affected at all. However, from the experience, I was more tuned in to the vibration, the literal vibration of earthquakes. And I remember sometime after that, I was in New York with some people and having dinner at a restaurant that was on the ground level directly above a subway line. And when the subway train went by, the building shook ever so slightly. And I don't think anyone else there noticed what was going on, but I noticed it because my attunement, as Abraham would say, my attunement to that vibration was peaked. I had a greater awareness of that level of vibration. And when the train went by, I felt it and I stopped. And I stopped the conversation and I said to everyone, did you feel that? And everyone just kind of like looked at each other and I said, that's what an earthquake feels like. And I wasn't afraid because I knew it wasn't an earthquake. I knew it was a subway train because I could hear that it was a subway train, but it felt like an earthquake and it triggered that kind of response within me, that hypervigilance, let's say, where I was preparing to react. Well, luckily, it didn't take too much time after that before I calmed all that down because I didn't obsess over anything earthquake related. I didn't fear that any building that I would be in would fall or that there would be another earthquake that would be worse. I didn't go there. It wasn't part of my nature to be afraid. However, if one were to do that, to have an experience that, as Abraham would say, was just contrast. I mean, my experience of the earthquake was a contrasting experience to my normal day. I did not turn it into a point of attraction going forward, and I've never been negatively affected by any earthquake since then. I mean, I felt a few after that, but nothing. So the way we turn contrast into what feels like assertion is through our focus. So consider, let's consider an experience. So most of us use Facebook fairly regularly. And if we do nothing but react to every post that goes by, then we're going to laugh at the funny ones. We're going to be like, aw, at the cute ones. We're probably going to be angry at the political ones. We might feel a little envy at ones where others talk about things that they have that we want, or that they experience that we want to experience. So that's that responding in kind. But then consider what happens when, so one of our friends hears on the news about some weird experience, or they see in their Facebook feed about some person on the planet who had a negative experience, and oh my God, it can happen to you. So then that person shares it with a warning, be on the lookout for this problem. And then the next person shares it, and then they share it, and it just goes viral. Well, if that is not if that description is not something that has happened to you, your focus on it increases the vibration of it within your own grid. So when you share it, you're increasing your belief. Well, it's not the sharing. The sharing of it doesn't matter. It's your feeling about it. But the problem is that if you have a reaction to a warning post and then you share it, it's now a part of your feed, so that when your friends respond to it, or maybe you run into that person in person and then they talk to you about it, see, now it's starting to gain some momentum. And so the action you took could be innocuous, because really the action doesn't matter. It's where your vibration is, always is, not even where it was, because you could react and share it and then clean up your vibration and nothing happens. But if you react and share it and then seethe on it, or think about it, or worry about it, or talk about it again and again, now you're starting to build momentum in that particular vibration. And that, whatever the vibration it is, and it doesn't have to show up as exactly the same event that you may be worried about. Because see, vibration, the universe operates in vibration, and there's lots of different experiences that have pretty much the same vibration. For example, violation is a vibration. And there's so many different ways that we can feel that vibration from an experience. And it could be a theft, or it could be any number of other things that we won't even go into. So the universe can bring us an experience that matches or the universe will bring us experiences that match our vibration, but they could be varied. There's a lot of different options for them to choose. So just to kind of wrap up this discussion, it's easy to see, I mean, yes, today, most of us are going to have a hard time believing the two strongest assertions, not the two strongest statements of law of attraction, which is that we can have anything that we want if we align with it, and that we can have a life free of anything we don't want when we don't align with it. It's that simple. It's like, it works in both directions. And at this moment, if we're being honest with ourselves, we accept the idea that we're not fully there, that we don't fully believe that we can have anything that we want. In fact, everything that we don't have that we want is something we don't yet believe in. And that's how it works. And we can let go of fear and worry about all the things we don't want. I mean, we'll accept that we're not there yet. But by soothing our negative moments, by milking our positive moments, by turning the other cheek, meaning turning away from those things that bother us. Now, in the beginning, we might have to try, Abraham always uses the word practice, and to some degree, I would say train. We have to train ourselves to move away from the things that we have done in the past. Train ourselves away from having those negative rants, to bringing back up our bad experiences after the fact. It's so hard to do. It's like, I had an experience just last week where there was something that had bothered me when it happened, and it bothered me for 2 weeks after that, and I thought I worked myself through it. And then I brought it up to a friend, and I got all like worked up about it again. So it was clear that the negative reaction was still within me, and by reapproaching the subject, I brought back up that reaction. And really all we need to do is to spend a little bit more time focusing on the positive and a little bit less time focusing on the negative. And then we get our gradual shift in our vibration from month to month. And as that happens, then the contrast, the wheel of fortune, the wheel rises up so that the range of experiences that are coming to us are higher. The highs get a little bit higher, the lows get a little bit higher. And I know for me, I don't even need the highs to be higher, because the highs are pretty good. They're really good. I would want the highs to be more frequent, but I don't need them to be higher. And I certainly would like the lows to be less frequent and to be less low. So by focusing on the highs, the lows will come up. It's that simple. It's challenging, but it's simple. Anyway, I hope this talk was useful to you or inspiring. And as always, if you have any comments about this, you can comment either wherever you found it, on Facebook or on my blog or on YouTube. You can email me at afoolsinclination@gmail.com. And my blog can be found at afoolsinclination.com. Have a great week.